Hey guys, out here in Okinawa today at Cape Zampa. I'm with Okinawa Ninja Kitty, Cat here, and just going to talk about this particular area of Okinawa. It's pretty beautiful scenery, but as far as typhoons, when the weather comes through here, it can be quite dangerous. She's going to give you some quick background info on the area if you're not familiar with it.
Hey everyone, so here we are, and this is a very popular tourist destination here in Okinawa. Behind me you can see the lighthouse, and actually you can go up and visit that lighthouse. You can go all the way to the top, get a great view. This used to be an airfield actually during World War II, the Battle of Okinawa. So if you want to come down and have a great chance to see Okinawa, you want to see the beautiful coast, some history, come down to Cape Zampa and check it out.
Now, as far as typhoons go, this area is quite dangerous. You can see the jagged rocks back here. It allows these waves just to crash ashore, especially when the winds are coming onshore. And they really could climb clear up to the top of this lighthouse you can see behind me here. So it comes up quite high, and also there's a lot of rogue waves that come in with it too. And, well, very dangerous and deadly scenarios often unfold. I want to warn you, this footage is quite graphic, so I'll just show you. This was shot by James Reynolds after Typhoon Jelawat last year, when the storm was off towards the north and the winds were coming in behind it. Well, a lot of waves were coming ashore, and it came, and well, this happened. So this person unfortunately did not survive. So as one thing people often get warned on about here is that these waves can swoop up. So a lot of people do like to fish out here, and well, it can be quite dangerous. But the other thing is it is very scenic. A lot of people come out here. But if you are here during a typhoon, I would suggest not to come to this area. It's not very sheltered either. There's going to be some really gusty winds coming through. If you remember, Typhoon Jelawat, though, was last year. This footage actually coming from there as well. A car being blown by it. So it was one of the stronger storms in the 2012 typhoon season. As we were driving out, I noticed this, and Kat talked to me about it. She actually said there was a big problem with cliff diving here, people jumping off. And I also noticed it's specifically directed at U.S. Forces Japan and all visitors, but apparently a lot of people had the bright idea of jumping off this cliff, thinking it was going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, that's probably not the wisest idea. So I know I shot a lot of video of the cliff and how beautiful it is. Don't jump off. Don't let all that information discourage you from coming down here. It really is quite a beautiful area, and even here on this, well, relatively warm, hot summer day, you still got some nice waves coming ashore here along the coastline. That is all for right now, everybody. I want to thank Kat for joining me. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me on.
This is one of my first video collaborations, so some great stuff. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can leave them down in the comment box below. I'm only here for a few more days, so if you have any other suggestions about other places to go here in Okinawa, I won't be able to do it, but she will.
Definitely.
And check out her YouTube channel. Like I said, if you want to find some places that are off the beaten path, she does a lot of stuff that is not the tourist attractions, but a lot of places that are little back alleys, and I really enjoy her channel. So yeah, do go check that out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye. Hey guys, typhoons, some of the most destructive forces on the face of the earth, and for good reason. We are scared of these storms and really what they can cause, and why do we always get worried when we find out one is headed towards us? Well, main reason is they are very, very deadly if you are in front of these storms. Today we're going to take a look at actually deadliest typhoons in recorded history across the Western Pacific and Eastern Asia. To start off our list with number 5, it actually occurred in 1281 here in Japan, actually in western Japan, into Hakata Bay, actually the western portions of Kyushu. Setting sail from Korea, moving across the strait there into Kyushu, was 6,000 Mongol ships, which, well, they were abruptly stopped by a typhoon, which is now actually referred to as divine wind or kamikaze. I know many people have heard that term before, taken into different context, but the original word for it comes from this typhoon, a very historical event because it stopped this force of 6,000 ships. Well, the result, though, was 60,000, but some totals put it out of 150,000 deaths due to these just the forces getting lost amidst the typhoon. into Japan. They call it the divine wind because it did stop the force, and really many people think that if that typhoon did not come along, Japan would have been occupied by the Mongol army, which really already took over much of Korea and China at that time, and really was an historical event. But regardless, 60,000 deaths and possibly 150,000 deaths is always a sad story. All right, number 4 on our list is Typhoon Swallow, which hit China in 1922. This storm caused between 60 and 70,000 deaths. Just an absolute record breaker. It is named actually after the town that it hit, where upwards about 5 to 10,000 deaths actually occurred here, and many more in outlying areas just due to a tremendous amount of rainfall. And then that brings us to the most recent storm on the list. In 1975, Typhoon Nina slammed into China. And originally, the death toll, which was still rather staggering, was put at right around 80,000 people. But then just in 2005, numbers came out, and China government actually released that it was more like 300,000 people perished, not just the floodwaters from the typhoon itself, but in Henan province, we saw a dam break here. All the water from that rushed through, and it wiped out several villages. And well, at the time, there was a big cover-up trying to cover up the fact that this dam broke, but really does go to show that not just storms can cause these tremendous amount of damage, but just due to the human impact on the world, the way we try to control nature at some times, well, that can result in really deadly outcomes. Now, thankfully, China has come a long way from their dam building in the 1970s, but really onto the Three Gorges Dam, which is the largest dam in the world. If that was to ever break in a very similar situation, very highly unlikely that it would, but the result would actually result in the possibility of millions of lives lost. And the most deadliest typhoon in the Western Pacific, at least in recorded history, in 1881. So this was before there was a naming system, before you had modern day warnings. Well, really into Vietnam is where it took place. It was called Typhoon Haiphong. Now, that was before names were put out. The reason why it's called Typhoon Haiphong is because this is the town or the city that was hit the worst, and over 100,000 deaths there alone. All across the area, staggering amounts of rainfall took place, and this resulted in the 300,000 casualties as a result of this typhoon. Just absolutely staggering. It really does go to show that how deadly these storms can be, especially in portions of southeastern Asia, where many of the buildings are not built to withstand the destructive force. We saw this in 2012, most recently with Typhoon Bofa that caused over 2,000 deaths. So, well, these storms really can still be deadly. And like I said, the deadliest storm on record was in Bangladesh, and that was in 1970. Recent times, to be honest, were 500,000 people perished when a storm came ashore there. So thanks again for watching, though, everybody. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can always post them down in the comment box below. Also, click over here if you want to check out my most recent top 5, which was the top 5 strongest typhoons, not the deadliest typhoons, but the top 5 strongest ones. Also, every Sunday I put out our Sunday vlog, just random shots from around Japan, and every day we have our Westpac weather video update. So thanks for watching, though, everybody, and as always, stay safe out there. Bye. Over the past several years, I've noticed a difference in opinions from people across the Western Pacific and the world on this exact question. Who is the official typhoon warning agency? Plus, what is the definition of a super typhoon? Because from what I have heard and seen from many people around the world, they really have no clue, and in reality, the exact answer is quite gray. So hopefully, in this episode of Westpac Weather 101, we'll be able to paint a clearer picture for you. Now, first, I want to start off by mentioning that there are numerous forecast agencies that forecast and warn on tropical systems in the Western Pacific, depending on how close they are to their respective countries. Now, to name them, it starts with Cambodia, China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, Laos, Macau, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Republic of Korea, Thailand, the United States of America, Weather Service, Vietnam, and also the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Now, all of these agencies are approved by the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, to do just that, with the exception of one. One of these agencies, numerous websites, actually on mainstream TV as an official agency, and that is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, aka JTWC, aka the United States military. Let me start off by saying that the JTWC is a great agency in its own right, and for what it does, forecasting the weather for the U.S. military. And to be honest, I like to use this agency to compare with other forecasts, but the JTWC has some fallbacks. First off, it is not part of the WMO, designated regional specialized meteorological centers, or one of its typhoon warning centers. In fact, the headquarters is in Hawaii and is not even located in the Western Pacific. So for storms that form near the JTWC, which they do not warn on, are actually called hurricanes. So a little bit of back information on the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and why does it warn on storms in the Western Pacific? Well, it was actually originally developed and created in support of the United States government and mainly military installations after the disaster of Typhoon Cobra in 1944. It sunk 4 ships east of the Philippines. Being part of the U.S. military in my past, I can actually say that is what their purpose is, working to prevent such disasters from happening again. With that said, the general public should not use this agency for many reasons. Now, to name a few here, one of them is that they tend to point long-range forecast at U.S. bases overseas. If you don't believe this, next time look closely at an initial warning from JTWC. It more often is going to point at a United States military base. Not always the case, but sometimes after their second or third warning, they'll shift it to another location. But this is part of their job, and they do this for planning purposes. Basically, the T-core systems. You want the long-range forecast to reflect that, so people at the military installations can start working around this. Another reason is that the Joint Typhoon Warning Center does not make local warnings. Actually, United States bases, and you can see here this was one of the hubs actually in Yokosuka that warns for all of the United States Navy bases there in Japan. They are responsible of making local warnings. JTWC is just responsible for creating the track. And lastly, there is one more reason here, and the fairly obvious statement on their website that reads this: products of this website are intended for the U.S. government agencies. Please consult your National Meteorological Agency or the appropriate World Meteorological Organization Regional Specialized Meteorological Center for tropical cyclone products pertinent to your country, region, and or local area. Once again, I do think this agency is good at what they do, and I always use them when comparing with other agencies on their forecast track. But when discussing the official warnings in dealing with typhoon planning, a civilian who has nothing to do with the U.S. military should not consult with JTWC. With that said, back to the original question: who is the official agency? Now, according to the WMO, it is the RSMC Tokyo, or the Japan Meteorological Agency. They are the hub of the Typhoon Committee, established in 1968, and actually communicate with all the other WMO-approved agencies in regards to their typhoon tracks. JTWC, by the way, is not the Typhoon Committee. And with this graphic here, you can see all the various agencies and their boundaries where, well, the official warnings do come from. The other cyclone warning agencies across the Western Pacific, all the numerous ones I mentioned at the start of this update, are responsible for their Pacific countries in creating typhoon warnings and watches for the local areas based on the threats they deem to be most severe. Yet this does not stop them from issuing their own forecast track as well. But remember, they are all part of the Typhoon Committee, so all of the people in the Typhoon Committee do communicate with each other before making any drastic changes in the forecast track. All these agencies also follow the WMO rules for naming these storms, with the exceptions of Bagasa storms. This is due to a few reasons. A few of them, the government feels that more to a storm that is that, well, people may also respond more when they hear it is a Philippine named storm, a little bit more sense of urgency. And lastly, Well, I think it's the mentality, if it's not broke, don't fix it there at Pegasa, and they've always named their own storm, so just keep it the same way. So with that said, the official warning agency in the Western Pacific is the Japan Meteorological Agency. They are the RSMC hub. As far as your local warnings, you have to rely on the local governments, but as far as archiving storm systems and their intensities, it is JMA. So now let's get into the second half of this update. What is the correct scale to use when covering typhoons? And what exactly is a super typhoon? Well, to be honest, that's a tricky question, and it's another one of those areas that has a lot of growth. I'll start off by talking about the WMO and the RSMC in Tokyo that we just mentioned. According, why is it used so much? Well, as said before, all the members of the Typhoon Committee are allowed to issue their own forecast tracks analysis, and that even includes warning. In this case, China and the Hong Kong Observatory use the term super typhoon, and it equals winds sustained about 185 kilometers per hour or higher. Yet the big user of super typhoon is also the non-WMO member, not located in the Western Pacific, but JTWC was also used as a term, but they use it as a different scale of 240 kilometers per hour. Needless to say, this leads to a lot of people getting quite confused when Hong Kong will start calling it a super typhoon, and we get the U.S. military in Okinawa who says it's not yet, but according to one agency it is, and another it's not. Another agency that actually says time and time again they do not use the term super typhoon is Pegasa, yet when you look at the Pegasa website, there is a web page there that actually indicates that winds of 200 kilometers per hour or stronger indicates a super typhoon. So four different agencies and three different scales of the term super typhoon, and needless to say, this is why we try not to use it. So with that said, JMA and the RSMC does not use the term super typhoon, but JMA is not perfect either, and often just adds to the confusion in regards to intensity. Reason is the word typhoon is a Chinese word which was adapted into the Japanese language for any major tropical system. So for their international naming system, they use a WMO standard, which is typhoon, in a scale ranging from strong to violent. Yet locally in Japan, the names are never mentioned as far as the international names, and instead a nomenclature is used. For example, Typhoon Jusan or Typhoon Ichi or Ni or San. Instead, everything from tropical storm to a violent typhoon is also referred to just as typhoon, which has led to a lot of confusion and conversations with many people from inside Japan to outside Japan, and also international media gets quite confused when a tropical storm is called a typhoon in Japan. We often refer to scale, but this is no agencies in the Western Pacific actually use this, and it's really meant for agencies in the Atlantic. So in the end, though, you can use whatever agency you want, whatever intensity scale you want, that helps you gather this information correctly and really relays it to the public in the best fashion possible. And that is one reason why there is so much confliction, because each country believes this is the best way. It would be nice if everybody here in the Western Pacific actually agreed on it, but that is the official agency in the tracks and naming is the RSMC in Tokyo, the Japan. That is only for side of Japan though, because inside Japan they use the domestic naming system and also the domestic intensity scales, unless you are inside Japan and you are part of the U.S. military. In that case, you use JTWC for your tracks, but your warnings do not come from JTWC. They come from the local military installations. And why official depends on who exactly you are. Now, everybody, thanks again for watching here at westernpacificweather.com. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can always post them down in the comment box down below. Also, if you have any other topics Hey guys, meteorologist Robert Spetta here with you today, joining you from Tokyo, Japan. Also joined in by Kat there from Okinawa, and also Jonathan O here as well from Tokyo, Japan. And today we are going to be talking about Typhoon Neoguri. What you just saw there was some footage actually from the last major typhoon that hit the Naha area. That was Typhoon Jelawat in 2012. And this storm system that we are watching at this time, this very well is going to be bringing winds much stronger than that, and that type of damage is very well possible. So this is something you really need to be being prepared for at this time, and definitely want to be ready when this comes ashore, because it is going to be no joke out here. So with that said, you guys go ahead and introduce yourself here. Thanks again for joining me here for this update.
Kat, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thanks for having me. For those of you who are watching, I am Kat. I live in Okinawa, and I've been here for about a decade now, so I've seen a number of different storms. So very excited to help you guys prepare and get all the information you need about getting ready for this one.
And as Robert said at the beginning, I'm Jonathan O. I am also located in Tokyo, and I am looking forward to this discussion because this is a pretty important situation, a pretty serious situation. It's not very often when you have the potential to see a typhoon this strong coming onto land. It doesn't happen as frequently, and so when it is on target to do something like that, we certainly want to make sure that you are well prepared and well informed, and so we're here to discuss those possibilities with you. So Robert, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, first I do want to know if you have any questions, please let us know. That is probably very important as well. Definitely, if you have any comments as well, toss them there into the comment box on our page. Definitely appreciate any of that, and also keeps the workflow going on this update. First, I do want to go ahead here and talk about where this storm is now and where it is headed, because right now we're actually seeing a very powerful storm system. I'll go ahead and pull up the satellite imagery, the latest one, and
Unfortunately, it sounds like we can't hear Rob right now.
I think we just lost Robert for a second. So what Robert was trying to discuss is lay down some of the basics on what is happening right now when it comes to Noguri, and I'm sure that he'll get his microphone working.
yeah, I'm back on, guys.
There you are.
Yeah, I moved to a different screen that didn't have it audio tuned in yet, so sorry about that. If that happens again, I really do apologize. Thank you very much for letting me know about that. All right, let's get right back to it, though. What I was talking about was with the Japan Meteorological Agency. They had winds currently at this time about 167, gusting to 241 kilometers per hour. That is from the official agency here, but they're actually relatively weaker than what we are seeing from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which has winds. This is actually quite incredible right now. 222 kilometers per hour, gusting up to 269 kilometers per hour. That is just, if this was to make landfall right now with winds like that, that's what causes some very significant and just severe devastation if this was to come on shore like that. Good news is that it does look like we should see at least some more intensifying and then some weakening possibly, but I mean, if you're in the right front quadrant of this storm system, it is going to be very, very serious. I mean, you guys can definitely agree with this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and also what's interesting is, as you mentioned the track, I just wanted to take a quick look at the sea surface temperatures from what's happening, and there is a lot of juice with this particular system. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I got it up right now here for you. Yeah, right over this storm system, we are seeing sea surface temperatures. Now I know that logo right there says TS8. It's a little bit old, but it places us a little bit farther towards the west. We have sea surface temperatures right around 34 degrees Celsius. That's 93 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot bath water. If you don't know too much about tropical systems, you need at least 80 degrees or more to really make them cook. Anything above 90 is just ridiculous. And that's really the fuel going into the storm system, allowing it to develop.
I mean, yeah, I was looking at the chart and I'm going, this thing has a lot of gas and a lot of power to propel the system where it's headed. So this is exactly the reason why it is a very particularly concerning situation, because of the potential they can really develop during the next day or so.
And yeah, I think by Monday night, yeah, you're going to start to see those conditions go downhill if you are out here into Okinawa and the southern Japanese islands. I'll go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit more, and we can see a little bit of a closer view and talk about the structure of this storm system at this time, because you can see right here on the visible imagery, we have a very clear and defined eye. It's about 50 kilometers in diameter, typical size for this type of storm. So much inflow coming in from the southern periphery. The southwest monsoon really just gave this a burst of moisture. And then you can see a lot of those cirrus cloud tops on the northern periphery of this storm system. If you're watching from home and you don't know what I'm talking about, watch this loop, and you can actually see some of these white wispy clouds on the northern part of this moving away from the center of circulation. Think of these cyclones as conveyor belts. You have the moisture in the lower levels feeding into this, and then it spits it out, and it spits all that out in the northern periphery. If you have an anticyclone aloft, and that allows all of that to move away, you're just going to have that much more exhaust, and that allows this to intensify. So it's sea surface temperatures, low vertical wind shear, you have that exhaust aloft. This really is very, very ripe for further intensification. I know if you're out here in the southern Japanese islands and you've been through these type of storms before, I don't really try to overhype stuff too often, but I think this is going to be one of the worst ones for Okinawa if that track holds true, at least in recent time. Am I going too far on that, guys?
No, this is definitely one of the biggest storms that I've seen in a long time. I mean, even with last year, it was last year, right, Jelawat that came through?
Yes.
That was not, it wasn't projected this big right away. You know, it wasn't so bad. It just happened to be the way it hit us, and this one is actually going to be a massive storm. You know, definitely as it moves through.
Yeah, I don't really have as much of a historical context to give to you regarding typhoons, but I just wanted to say the imagery you just showed was very, very impressive. It's quite large, and that center of circulation is just impressive. Just to see that type of ability for the system to have that type of efficiency, it's pretty significant.
And then I do want to go ahead and we actually got our first question on here from Ashley. Thank you very much for chiming in. I do want to go ahead and show the forecast as far as what the timeline is, and that's kind of a good point here. Now, right here, I'm actually starting off with right around Monday night. We're going to start to see those conditions go downhill in Naha, and you're going to be looking at winds at this time around 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, heavy showers by Monday night. And also the other big thing is by this time you're going to get these outer rain bands coming through. Even though they're outer rain bands, it's not the core of the system. Some of them can be producing damaging wind gusts within them. You get more isolated thunder cells, and those also can produce, I don't like to say it, but there's things as strong as tornadoes, at least weak rain-shrouded tornadoes, which can come ashore. If you ever watch in the States, whenever you get a landfalling tropical system, what always gets issued? A tornado watch. So this is something you're going to want to watch out for. Let's continue to scroll ahead, though. Tuesday into Wednesday, the storm system is going to be pushing by basically Tuesday around noontime, late morning into around noontime, just towards the west of those of you on Okinawa. This puts you right in the right front quadrant, and this would be, I made a video about a week ago where I put out a huge cone of air and said if the storm system was to pass just west of Okinawa, that would be worst case scenario. This is, as far as a track goes, worst case scenario for those of you in Naha, because that's going to push right overhead. Now, as we scroll ahead, though, I don't want to just only pinpoint those of you in the Naha. We're going to be watching the storm system pull away. The Amami Islands, you're starting to see some high winds by this time. Coming in from the south, looking upwards of about 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. The worst of the weather will be offshore. But, I mean, waves out here are going to be about 8 to 9 meters high. And then this is going to make a second landfall into parts of Kyushu. Those in Sasebo, we just had a question out of Sasebo. You are going to be seeing, if not typhoon strength winds, severe tropical storm strength winds. You want to prepare for the storm system just as much. The big difference between Okinawa and the main island extending off there towards Kyushu is that Okinawa's infrastructure is built for typhoons. When we start talking about these areas out here into Kyushu, Shikoku, typhoons are regular. This is indeedly true, but once we get in those winds, you start to see a little more problem with structural damage. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen with this. I think the bigger threat for Western Japan is going to be the heavy rainfall out of this, especially for areas along southern parts of Kagoshima over towards Shikoku. We could be seeing a pretty decent moisture inflow, which is going to be providing that threat of flooding out there, extending all the way from Kyushu, Shikoku, the Kii Peninsula, and showers definitely kicking up for those of you by Thursday and possibly even in the Friday over towards the Kanto Plain. And we can even scroll ahead here and just watch this storm system. It dramatically weakens over Japan because of land indirection, and also starting to get this wrapped up with the jet stream. But I mean, take a look at JTW's forecast. By this time, it is still considered a Category 1 typhoon by Thursday evening with winds of 136, gusting to 171 kilometers per hour. So, yeah, if you are in Western Japan, you still want to watch out for this as well, and you do want to be making preparations. But as far as those intense winds and what we're stressing Category 5 type of stuff, that will be back there towards the west. What do you guys think? I know JTWC has put out Category 5. Do you think that's a little bit strong?
I don't know if it's necessarily too strong. I mean, the thing is, as we've been continuing to follow the storm, the verification process has seemed to fly more in JTWC's favor. So the intensification process seems to be lining up with what they're looking at as opposed to the track that JMA has pointed out. I think, though, it's still important to stress that even if it doesn't become the maximum Cat 5 type storm, that preparations still need to be made right now, because whether it's a Cat 1 or a Cat 5, it's going to have definitely a big impact, especially for the smaller islands of Western Japan. I mean, I'm sure Cat will definitely be able to emphasize the importance of preparation because of this.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that's really important to remember as well is even though this storm might be projected to be a Cat 5 or whatever it comes as, it's always really important to prepare ahead of time, especially when we have a storm that tends to hook in this direction, where it's anticipated to come at Okinawa from the west, as opposed to, or not from the west, but hook around the backside of Okinawa, as opposed to stay out. And the reason for that is because here in Okinawa, it tends to be our weaker side as far as structure and everything. We don't normally get storms from this angle. So even a storm that's not so strong is still going to cause damage. So whether it comes at us at a Cat 5 or 4 or 3 or 2, it's still something we need to prepare for, and you need to take very seriously.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think this isn't one, and as I mentioned at the start, it is quite often mentality, and especially in Okinawa, people think that uh, these storms come quite often, and we can just ride them out. And I think sometimes, yeah, the infrastructure is built for it, and the thing is, you should ride it out. Wait for it to pass, but be ready. Make sure you prepare, and don't think that you can venture out. Especially the military, often here, the locals aren't panicking or anything like that. Trust me, the locals are. The people out here are getting ready, and they're taking it seriously. Just put on the news. People are getting ready for this storm system, and they're definitely making no plans for Tuesday. You may see every now and then that one crazy person that's still out and about there, but I mean, you see that in any city around the world whenever a storm system makes landfall, even in the States. You see those few crazy people that think I still need to get to work today. Um, yeah. I can't stress enough that point there. You were just talking about how the western parts of the island do take a pretty good when we get the weather over there, right, Kat?
Yes.
Um, and the good news I think I see with this one is that the winds will be coming in from the south and the southeast, but once that storm system passes and moves off towards the north, they will shift in from the west. And if we go back, actually, that imagery I was just showing you a second ago, we can even see that by basically Tuesday evening, we're going to see those, and I got a point I'm going to show it to you here in a second. We're going to see basically the worst of this storm come in, but we still could see those waves shift in from the west. Now, it won't be as strong by that point as far as we're not going to be seeing that Cat 4 intensity, but this is still going to be some pretty high waves. So even after the storm passes, please, for the love of God, do not head out to the beaches. That's where we always see people think it's lax. You still just kind of want to ride it out and continue to ride it out until probably, if you can, if you don't have to go anywhere Wednesday morning, please don't. Just wait for this one to pass. But I also want to show this to you guys. All right, so we got our storm system here, and there's Okinawa. Now, where this is going to be coming ashore, and this is one thing that Kat just pointed out, she was saying that the west coast is basically the vulnerable side. If we take a look at a map of the southeastern parts of the island, you're really seeing most of this is actually cliff line out here. Am I right, Kat?
Some of it, yes. There's a lot of low-lying areas and even an outer island in there, too. So there are a lot of people that do live in there, probably not the military community if you are, watching from the military community, though.
That's actually one thing I wanted to point out. There is one there now. That's the extreme southern guide because I just moved over here a little bit, and we do have a lot of low-lying areas up in here. And I think if there is any threat of storm surge, these are the locations that are probably going to get it the worst with the worst of the storms. Now, Okinawa, we really don't typically talk about storm surge because a lot of it is very steep shorelines. So it's not as, for example, Haiyan and Tacloban. It's not the same type of setup. But you still could see coastal flooding, and there is still that risk of some of these waves coming up, and definitely threat of right near the immediate coastline. And these are a few things you want to keep in mind. While I have this up, a few people are actually asking about the airport as well, and if they could fly in and out of Okinawa. Probably not going to happen, people. This is right on the southern coast of the island, and you're not going to be able to get in and out of there. As far as I know a lot of you are probably watching from Kadena or the military off there towards the north. Remember, you are farther located off here on the northern, or not, still in the southern part of the island, but most of the military, as you were just saying, probably live on the west coast, right along that base. If you live on the east coast, at least in those bays and inlets, at least you'll be a little bit more protected. But the thing is, on the west coast, I do think that the wind is probably going to be the bigger problem during the height of the storm. Like I mentioned, it still could wrap around. You're still going to see some high waves by Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, but I think the winds are going to be the bigger issue here.
Yeah, definitely. And even especially just to comment on something you were saying just briefly before, it's really important to understand for those of us who are here on Okinawa that even as the storm does pass, as you mentioned, the wind is going to kind of come back at the west coast at the tail end of it. That is when we start to feel safe. Some people start to think, oh, the storm is gone, but it's really important to stick in there and stay put until everything is absolutely out of the way.
I just also seen somebody asking, what are the chances of it missing Okinawa in the comment section? Um, what I can say about that is it's not going to miss Okinawa at this time. I think you guys could probably agree. Even if the storm wavers a few hundred miles in each direction, it's pretty big circulation. You're still probably going to be seeing typhoon strength winds. What do you guys think? We're pretty confident, right?
Yeah, this system will have an impact for the western islands of Japan. Whether it may, and I think this is something that's very important to emphasize. A lot of people say, oh, the center of circulation is not going to pass over us, we're going to be okay. That is not true. If this system is going to be coming as close as we think it is, it doesn't matter if the eye of the storm actually passes over Okinawa. It's going to still affect you directly. And so that's the reason why even like Robert just said it. A few hundred miles, it doesn't matter. You definitely still need to prepare for yourselves. And that's why I also want to mention people in the southern coast of South Korea, especially into areas like Busan. You're going to also feel some effects from the storm as the storm moves into places like Kyushu and Shikoku, because it's going to be a significantly enough of a size of a storm to where you're going to definitely feel some effects from that. So be prepared for those of you down toward the southeastern and southern coast of South Korea as the system continues to move toward the north and east. But I agree with Robert. I'm fairly confident of the track that is currently in place, which is that the system will be moving toward the north and moving over Okinawa within the next day or so before it starts to make a slight turn to the right. Previous tracks have taken this maybe a harder ride. I don't see that happening. I think that it's going to still take a little bit longer. So it's going to take a northerly track, then it's more northeasterly track before it starts to take off from the area.
And I just actually pulled this up here, and I do apologize for our friends there in South Korea that I kind of missed you when I was running through the timeline there. Yeah, Busan, you're still going to get hit pretty hard by this. It's not the center of circulation, but yeah, you're still going to be seeing some gusty winds, some heavy rainfall coming out of this, especially right near the immediate coastline. Busan does have a lot of low-lying areas, and not just there, all the cities up and down the southern coast. Jeju, I think, is going to get hit pretty. If anybody has vacation plans out there, it's the middle of summer. A lot of people are traveling.
Yeah.
It is not going to be pleasant.
Yeah, Jeju is going to be dealing with. It's an island, and it's a smaller island, and so the impacts of it, especially, I think, when we go into probably closer toward Monday night and Tuesday, is when it's going to really start picking up even over into Jeju Island, and so you definitely need to start making preparations now if you're going to if you have to weather out the storm. Definitely make the preparations now.
I do want to mention, somebody said here a moment ago they were in the Philippines and they're waiting for the enhancement of the southwest monsoon. And last week I was really kind of stressing it here for you. It does look like the monsoon has kicked in, but for Manila, it's really missed out. I do want to mention that. I know we're concentrating on the center of circulation, but there was another aspect of this storm system, and that's the enhancement of the monsoon. And what we have been seeing is the showers mostly down towards the south and around the Cebu area. Thunderstorms down there as well, and it does look like flooding has missed out on Manila. It was something I was worried about when the storm formed. We were talking about 4 or 5 days ago. We knew that there was going to be some sort of moisture inflow coming around this, and it does look like it stayed a little bit farther towards the south, which is good news because Manila definitely could see some significant flooding if that followed through. It does look like not following through as worse or as bad as it could have. So some good news there. Thanks for that question. No, somebody was asking there in Manila. I still think you're going to see your afternoon storms, but if anything, the good news with this storm system is that we are seeing it kind of suck up a lot of the moisture over the Philippines, basically like a vacuum, and we get it all sucked up, and those afternoon storms may not be even as predominant, possibly, as we look at the next 24 hours.
Yeah, Robert, you just mentioned something that I think is happening. Whenever you have a storm as powerful with as low of pressure coming through the area, you have that miniature high that develops, and that's going to develop, and that's what's happening over Manila. It'll be interesting to see as it pulls away what happens behind it. But in the meantime, it looks like it's going to stay relatively dry for a place like Luzon because of the system becoming so powerful. There was another interesting question. We were talking about tracks earlier. The question is about how the track seems to be more westerly as the updates come through. So the question is, what are the chances of it affecting Hong Kong?
That's a very good point, and actually that's a pretty good question here. I think we could see this spark up some instability within the rainy season front, but a direct impact on Hong Kong seems unlikely. And there's a few reasons. This is my thoughts on this. A few reasons I think behind this. We have the Westpac High, and this is rounding the Westpac High off there towards the east, but we also have a high pressure kind of over the South China Sea out here. And I'm trying to pull up the streamline analysis so I can really show what's happening here. And this is falling in between both of those highs. Oh, here we go. Now I got it up. And this is falling in between both of these highs here. So we got the one in the east, we got the one in the west, and this is going to come up right into the middle. And you see these lines on your screen. That's going to fall right along these lines and push up. And then once it gets hooked by the upper level jet, it gets moved into there. I know it's been moving farther west and west, ever so slightly, but I think that's more so due to a slight strengthening with the Westpac High than anything actually pulling it west. What do you think, Jonathan?
Sorry, I was like pulling something else up for a second. I don't think Hong Kong will get any type of direct impact. I did notice that as we were discussing this particular track, that the system in its enormity will actually start to kick up some of the winds along the eastern side of China. So places like Shanghai may actually see the wind starting to kick up, not nearly as strong as the areas toward Japan and South Korea, but people along the eastern portions of China may notice some changes in the weather pattern for the next couple of days as the system skirts by. But in terms of Hong Kong's a little bit further west than that. I don't see that really becoming a huge issue as we go throughout this particular system. Yes, every time when you notice a tendency or a shift in the track, that there's some concern from it. But it's still, in terms of the overall track, has been relatively stable in terms of not veering like thousands of miles to the west. And so I don't see any type of major intensification of the Westpac High that will help to push that. So I'm fairly confident that the track that's in place right now will be the one that we'll be seeing during the next few days.
Yeah, I got some fair confidence in that as well. I think that this is really going to follow through. And yeah, those of you out here in Okinawa are going to be pretty much hit. And I think Taiwan and the eastern portions of China are going to get, these outer rain bands. The winds will pick up. But the worst of it is going to be some of these outlying islands in Okinawa Prefecture and the main island of Okinawa. So with that said, I want to pass it over to you there, Kat, because you said you did some venturing around today. People are starting to really take this seriously. So what are you seeing out there right now, if you don't mind sharing that with us?
Well, it's actually beautiful here in Okinawa as far as weather goes, and I think that that's fooled some people, but there are some others who are really starting to take this seriously, starting to prepare, and that's a really great thing. Now, earlier we mentioned how some people are saying the locals aren't freaking out, and that's why they really haven't taken things seriously. Well, just because they're not freaking out doesn't mean that they aren't preparing, and they are. Definitely, we're seeing an increase of people at grocery stores and department stores getting everything they need, but mainly it's just last-minute items, and it's important that everyone is also doing the same. I did hear that the commissary on Camp Foster is running pretty low on stuff, so that just gives you an idea of how much people are doing as far as preparation last minute. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, I really, it's good to know that you're out there and you're letting us know that people are getting ready. The key thing to note, though, I think, for people out there is one reason why you don't see, I'm showing you guys a picture of the International Space Station. One reason why you don't see people running to the grocery store at the last minute, especially there in the southern Japanese islands, is because most people always already have a Typhoon kit ready. And
Absolutely.
I know last time I was there with you, you were talking about that and how you always stressed, always have that kit ready, because not just typhoons, the emergency kits are interchangeable with tsunamis as well, for example, right?
Yeah, it's always great to have stuff in order to prepare yourself. Not only for that, but here in Okinawa, there's a ton of things that can happen. We have landslides here. I mean, they happen on different parts of the island. If you need to evacuate, you need to make sure you're taking important items. The tsunamis, of course, is always a possibility. Earthquakes, always a possibility. And it's always good to have supplies. It's always good to make sure you have something in order to prepare yourself. And for the most part, people in Okinawa always have those things on hand. They're not really doing much other than replenishing a few items now and then. You know, even at the grocery store today, I was out and about just getting some stuff for the week, and people aren't buying up carts full of items. They're buying a couple, you know, cup ramen here, or maybe some fun things for the storm there, but no major purchases right now. So it's really something to learn from and try and exercise yourself.
Hey, I agree 100%. I think those same rules could probably apply for people in the States as well when a storm comes ashore, especially hurricanes. You always see people just running out.
I mean, the thing is, in the States, you know, people hear about hurricane, and then they all run to the stores, and I promise you, you will not get what you need the day before the storm is supposedly coming towards you, because the preparation mentality is a little bit different in many areas in the States, and so that's the reason why it's always important to have an emergency kit ready to go. A lot of the items in an emergency kit do not expire. Really, the food is really the biggest portion that you will need to replenish, but when it comes to other necessary items, those things last for a long time. So it's helpful whether it's a hurricane or a typhoon or anything like that to definitely stay prepared as well. I want to briefly show this because we were talking about the Hong Kong possibility, and I saw this. And this is kind of alluding to what Robert was talking about. This is the forecast coming up on the 9th. And you can see the powerful jet to the north that's going to help serve as a steering mechanism toward the east. But also this huge high that's also going to be developing over China. And so it's going to serve as a blocking mechanism. So it's going to really just keep on moving to the north before diverting over to the north and east before the system really even gets anywhere near China. So I would not be concerned in Hong Kong about the potential for it coming along there, because it's just too far to the east, and that high back to the west over China will really serve as the blocking mechanism for that.
Yes, this is good news out there for you. I don't see this one really throwing us through any major loops at this time. The track has been pretty spot on thus far. I mean, we did have a big cone that's been centered down, but yeah, I really wouldn't worry about it too much farther off there towards the west. It really is in the southern Japanese islands. I just actually asked a question in the comment section there a moment ago, and I've seen a lot of you answer. If you are watching and you're not checking the comment section, yeah, I just want to see if you guys could comment and let me know where you're watching from, because we keep on concentrating on one or two areas, and I just want to make sure that we're talking about the right locations. Yeah, if you could go ahead and let us know. I seen one person from Okinawa, another person actually from the UK. We also had somebody comment from just south of Seoul. So yeah, there's a lot of people watching the storm system. I want to see where the bulk of it is, if you don't mind asking. I mentioned this at the start of the update. I'm going to go ahead and mention it again, because I'm just going to do a quick recap. It's been about 40 minutes since we started. Somebody was asking what is the current intensity of the storm system. We're looking at about 222 gusting to 269 kilometers per hour at this time. It's moving forward at 28 kilometers per hour as well, so it is picking up the pace. That is via the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. I think they're a little bit more accurate in the intensity because this storm system is not anything weak. It is a very powerful storm. JMA 167 to 241 kilometers per hour in their intensity, but it's I mean, that's not much weaker. That's still powerful. And you can see, I'll put it up on your screen here, they're expecting a max winds as this passes by of 194 gusting to 278 kilometers per hour. That is just a violent typhoon, but that's from JMA. If we take a look at our friends from JTWC, that's the U.S. military, they're expecting max near when the storm passes by Okinawa of right around, I know it's gusting over 300 kilometers per hour, 259 gusting up to 315 kilometers per hour. That is a type of wind where you don't need debris, you just need the rain, and if you're out in that, it'll hurt. I think that the strongest winds I've ever been in, it was right around 100 kilometers per hour, and that hurt.
I don't know what else to say. Yeah, it hurts. Ouch.
I heard one of you guys were about to say something, so
I'm just like, we're speechless. Yeah, it hurts, especially when we have winds blowing that hard. Yeah. Be prepared to stay indoors for an extended period of time. If you're not departing from the island tonight, going into tomorrow, you probably will not be departing Okinawa for the next couple of days because this system will ground all flights out of there. There's just no way that flights are going to be taking off. In fact, I had some friends today who were asking me how are flights going to be affected in Tokyo, in the Kanto plains, coming up in the next few days. And by midweek, it's going to get a little dicey even here. And that's when the system is weakening as it approaches the area. And so in Okinawa, you're definitely going to be dealing with the brunt of this in the next couple of days. Make sure that you make the preparations. Don't plan on leaving the house because it will be very difficult to travel anywhere while the system moves overhead.
And actually, via the military, and we were talking about the T-Core systems, one thing I do like about it, though, is that when they get to that T-Core 1 level, you're technically not supposed to move. For the military, people who are not military, they can do whatever they want, even though it's not a smart idea. But the people in the internet, they could actually get in trouble for being out and doing something. So I find that very interesting and smart on their end for that specific rule. I do want to mention, you were just talking about here in Tokyo there, John, about the potential for basically Thursday and the Friday. It's not going to be very pleasant. Actually, we just got a comment there from Roman. He's in Shizuoka, and he was asking about how this storm system is going to be impacting there as well. And we were talking about it earlier in the start of the update, how when this low comes over Kyushu, it's really going to pump in this moisture from the south coming out of the tropics and parts of Kagoshima, Shikoku, Kii Peninsula, and yes, over towards Shizuoka, gosh, I can't talk. Shizuoka, you're going to be seeing that threat of flooding out here, and even landslides. Whenever you get a storm like this coming through, you always see minor landslides. Sometimes they're even larger than that. But flooding, especially in the low-lying areas, I do think we're going to see some rapid river level rise. Also, don't be surprised if we do see typhoon strength winds up and down the eastern coastlines here as this storm system starts to have those winds wrapping in around from the south. I mean, what do you expect up here in Tokyo, Jonathan? Have you looked ahead at that? Like
I was looking at I was looking at one of the models, and it looks like that the core of the system will actually start, at least according to the GFS model, it almost looks like that the core of the system is going to start breaking down as it's moving over the central area of Japan. So initially, we're talking about midweek, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that's when you're going to see the worst of it, and then it's just going to really become a nasty rain system as it tries to depart from the island, the central portions of Japan, going into the latter part of the week. So that's what it's looking like as we go throughout the week. So the brunt of the storm, western, southern Japan. By midweek, central Japan, that's when things start to taper off in terms of the wind strength, but the rain will still be a big part of the system because you get the feed off of the western waters right over the right over central Japan. So that's something that you also have to look out for. So if not the winds by the end of the week, the rain will still be getting us. So talk about a massive rainy season boost taking place as we go through the second part of the week.
Also, we just had a question, somebody asking, what's the possibility of the storm system basically continuing to track north and impacting South Korea directly? I think my thoughts before I toss over to you guys, I think that the jet stream is going to be a little bit too strong up here for this to continue to track north. If anything, it could brush and maybe go through the Korean Strait there, but I don't think this is going to move off there. 100% agree. Once it moves over Kyushu, Shikoku, and Western Honshu, all the mountains out there, they're just going to rip this apart. Your center of circulation is not going to be a major issue anymore.
When it comes to South Korea, because I did see that question, southeastern portions of South Korea are going to deal with the system no matter where it actually lands. The chances of it tracking further west are not high, but I would not completely rule it out. Things have happened, weird things have happened, but the likelihood that it would track so far to the west that we start looking at impacts into places like Daejeon and Seoul, I don't see that happening. I think that's a little bit too aggressive when it comes to that. There are too many forces in place to prevent that from happening, but I think that the impact will definitely be in Busan, parts of the eastern coastline. I don't think Gangwon-do will necessarily get very much of this either. Maybe winds and things like that, but really the deep impact southeastern portions of South Korea. Maybe a slim chance, but mainly still staying with the track that we've had, because so far it's kind of kept in line with what the expectations have. I think the bigger disparity has been intensity, not track. Track has been relatively similar. It's the intensity of the storm that I think that we've been seeing a lot of variation between the two agencies.
Yeah, that's the good thing, is that we haven't seen too many differences between the agencies, which is always good. I remember last year we actually had one storm where I went through about 20 agencies, not 20, that's an exaggeration, it was 10. It still seems like a lot. 10 different agencies, and each of them had a slightly different track. This was one that was going out through the South China Sea. So it's good to see a lot of them are in line with this. That always is very useful. Hey, somebody was asking here about the thickness of the steering ridge. I do want to point out, yeah, you're right, it was upwards about 200 HPA, and that's what we're seeing right now. And I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen. This is via Sims, and it's just a streamline analysis, and you can see how deep that steering ridge is. This also shows that anticyclone aloft. So yeah, it's a very strong ridge, and that is one reason why this is running around the western periphery of it, and it hasn't really given away very much to kind of allow the storm system to push east. So that's actually a pretty good meteorological question there. Thank you. I think you're putting a hint on it, but I don't know if that's a question or you're trying to test. Whatever. Also, somebody, Bill just put out here as well. FYI, on Cadetta's brand bulletin, the strongest winds on Okinawa are expected to be 105 knots. With gusts to 130 knots at 2 p.m. Japan Standard Time. So it does look like the military guys there on the Kanata Air Force Base expect it to be a couple hours later than what the CPA is for Naha. What is that in kilometers per hour? Let's see.
What's the amount again?
105 gusting to 130 knots.
It's about 195 kilometers per hour.
Yeah. That's sustained, right?
Yeah, 105 knots. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the 130 knots?
130 knots is about 240 kilometers per hour.
That will do damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think there, Kat? Are you getting ready? Getting excited there?
Definitely getting ready. Definitely excited. I've been through so many of these that I am not, it's another walk in the park for those of us who have been here for so long, but it can be a little bit novelty to some people who are new. But definitely excited for this one. Definitely want to see what it has in store for us down here.
Did you say walk in the park?
Well, okay. Well, let me clarify that, and I'll go real quick. You know, for us, one of the things that's so important, and I emphasize a lot, even though actually all of us here are very serious about making sure people are informed, and we take it very seriously. The reality of the situation is, although it is serious, Okinawa is definitely built for these types of storms. We have a lot of concrete, all the stuff that people who visit Okinawa and say, "Ooh, it looks so old and dreary." That's what keeps this place standing. It's lots of concrete, it's lots of strong buildings built in just the right way. So really, beyond the damage from things like trees and flying debris, which is usually stuff left out by people, we don't see too much damage here in Okinawa. So it's just making sure that you're staying inside and have all the stuff that you need for the storm, and it can be as easy as a walk in the park, even for a big storm like this.
I can't stress that enough. Don't venture out in this. This is definitely a very intense system. Somebody actually just asked, I keep on forgetting we have a lot of Americans watching who don't understand kilometers per hour. 1.5 to 130 is about 120 to 150 miles per hour. That's what yeah.
Yeah.
You're just looking it up as well.
Yeah. We're working for you. So yeah, we see the questions. We're working on it. So sometimes we're doing it on 2-3 different fronts. So.
Yeah, we're there to answer you. Hey, well, one quick thing is the best way to, whenever you see a number you don't understand, just type it in the toolbar, 105 knots to mph, and it'll pop the number up real quick for you. I'm not a genius in math. I didn't think of that off the top of my head. That's all I did was just at the top of the screen to click, and then it threw up the mph. So, yeah, the same person was asking about the steering ridge earlier, asking if it'll give away. It doesn't look like it's going to give way. This is a very strong steering ridge. This is a pretty good consensus on this storm system that this track is going to be holding true. Really, if it wavers, it will only be slightly, and I think if it wavers any, it might be farther to the west. That's my thought on it. But if it only wavers, it's only going to waver about 50 kilometers at the most. That's what I think. I don't think we're going to see anything stronger than that. But even if it does waver a little bit, I mean, the impacts are still going to be the same. We're still looking at, I mean, those winds at 150 miles per hour. It's not pleasant, and it's definitely very dangerous out there, even if it does go west or east.
There has been a lot of emphasis in the past when people are so concerned about, oh, where is this storm going to land? And completely forget about the possibility that the storm is a little bit bigger than just 20 kilometers where the eye is located, or 30 or 50. It's always bigger than that. And so when you mention the big the impacts that come from the storm, even if the steering ridge budges just a hair, the impacts are not going to go away. So make sure that you are preparing for this system, because those little tiny changes are going to still bring the same type of impact into the concerned areas that we've discussed during this webcast.
I want to show this too, and I think this is going to be, this will put it in perspective, because I often hear people say about this little center line here, and they're so concentrated and so worried about the center line. And from a meteorological perspective, we do care about the center line because we extrapolate off of that as far as the most intense winds, and we really worry about that eye wall. That is where those damaging and destructive winds. But people think that even though they're away from that center line, it's going to be a breezy day. That is not the case, and this is one reason why I want to show this. I want to put this up on the screen. So we have our center line here, right? And that is the latest track from JTWC. Let's get rid of that center line, and let's show the wind field. I mean, it's not this. I think this puts it a little bit more in perspective. You're gonna see these strong winds well away from the center. It is not just around that center of circulation. Yeah.
In fact, looking at this particular image, you can see that, I mean, the wind field extends all the way across the top of the screen, as far west as, is that the, I think that's the Philippines over there to the west, right?
That's Taiwan right there.
In
That's
Taiwan, I'm sorry, I couldn't see it. I got a little fuzzy screen here. Okay, so it's almost as far west as the coastline of Taiwan. The red-orange field is that far and wide. So it doesn't matter if the center is slightly over to the west or slightly over to the east, it's still going to have that much of an impact. And that's the reason why it's really important not to focus on just the center line. The center line, yeah, sure, it's the eye wall, but the powerful winds do extend out much further than that, especially much farther than that because of the intensity of the storm. Its influence is a lot wider from the eye wall.
I'm sorry. I'm just reading through the comments, and Roman's putting some stuff out there about the Philippines, and you know what? This is very important news, and it's there's problems with all the agencies out here in the Western Pacific. The T-Core system, for starters, we were talking about. It's not a very great system, but also sometimes the Philippine media and the Philippine agency with Pagasa, they name their own storms, and we actually we haven't been saying it because we don't think we should be stressing it, but this does have a second name. It's Florida. It did get named by Pagasa because it entered the Philippine area of responsibility out here, and I guess Roman's saying, and for good reason, people are a little worried because the minute this enters the Philippine area of responsibility, which is basically extending out from the PH out here towards about, I think, the 125 line, it gets its Philippine name, and then people get worried, think the storm system's coming. No, this is not going to head there, and I think that's people should talk about it, but not be stressing it out there. Thanks, Roman, for pointing that out. Yeah, this does have that second name on it now, but it will move well east of the Philippines. This is not going to have a direct impact. Maybe indirectly with some enhancement of the monsoon, but as we mentioned earlier, it's sucking up all the moisture. It's kind of creating a bubble high around it. So if anything, it may actually reduce the rainfall of 4 parts of Luzon at this point. But you gotta love those secondary names on these storm systems, for real. The storm now has, well, you know what? JTWC and JMA are on the same nomenclature still. Near the end of the season, they usually get split off. So we'll often get JTWC sometimes saying this would be Typhoon 8. JMA says Typhoon Hotch, or if it was a different name at that time, it would say Typhoon Q, for example. Then you get Florida, and then you would get Neoguri. And everybody has a different intensity scale. For example, this is a Super Typhoon according to one agency, but maybe not a Super Typhoon according to another. Yeah, I wish it was consistent.
And those of you who joined a little bit earlier than 7 o'clock would have seen this video, and you can actually check out the video on Westpac Weather about all of the different agencies and how they're all involved in different scales and in different names. That's something that blew my mind when I came to this side of the world, because in the United States, it's very simple. There's one naming system. There's one agency that names the storms when it comes to officially naming the storm based on the criteria. Coming over here, it's just all over the place, and so it really surprised me. And so I can see why there is concern when one agency says one thing and names a system, and then another agency may not name it right away. In fact, I think that when Neoguri was actually named, JTWC took a little bit longer before they named it, and so it was this inconsistency, seemingly inconsistent, because of the time difference. But ultimately, at least the two main, larger agencies, JWC and JMA, are on similar pages when it comes to this particular storm. It's a big storm. It's expected to move through the southern islands of Japan before making a northeasterly turn right over Kyushu before it becomes rapidly torn up over the mountains of Japan.
Yeah, and we're talking about the timeline on this storm system. I do want to point out, we mentioned it earlier, but I'll mention it again because this is quite important. Is the exact timing of it as it does push over Okinawa, because the worst of this is going to be around noontime. According to the military guys, they're about 2 p.m. JMA saying about noon, though. I mean, same time period, and any time on Tuesday, just don't do anything, people. This is going to be rough. Winds will be coming in from the south, so basically throughout Tuesday morning, we're going to see the worst of the weather here along the southern and eastern peripheries of the island here. I can even zoom in on these winds. You can see that wrapping around and hitting the southern coastline. But as we look ahead through Tuesday evening, those winds are going to change in from the west. Tuesday evening and through overnight Tuesday and the Wednesday, Kat, you're probably going to get the worst of the weather for you. The winds may not be as strong, but they're going to be coming onshore on the west coast. I know a lot of the military out there as well, including the Cadena base, probably will be starting to see those winds come on shore as well. Now, as far as winds, the winds will let up. I do note that there is a little break down here towards the south. That is caused by Taiwan. It's kind of a bubble happening downwind of that. So you see a little bit of lighter winds. But it's not until basically Wednesday night when the conditions taper off. And even then, you're still going to be seeing some big waves out here. Yeah, remember, this has a very large wind field around the storm system. We go ahead and pull up that satellite picture I was showing you earlier. I mean, this takes up a very large area. So it's not like it is going to be hitting you and gone in a few hours. I know it's moving rather rapidly, but you're still going to be seeing breezy conditions all day on Tuesday and extending through Wednesday morning as well. I think if you don't have to travel Wednesday morning, I wouldn't. That's my opinion. I know work is important, but maybe that would be a judgment call by then, depending on how bad it is out there. But I think it's still going to be a kind of a sketchy situation. I always use my best advice I like to give people. If it looks dangerous outside and you have to sit there and think a split second, you have to think about it, it probably is dangerous.
That's such a really good point, and I wanted to make sure I actually got the chance to say this briefly, but one of the huge things that people really need to understand is everything, including the T-Core system. A lot of people go by the T-Core system, and they need to understand that's a guide. If you are seeing that the T-Core system says it's safe to go to work and you don't feel safe, do not leave. Call in, do whatever you have to do, because there are oftentimes, it actually happened a few times last year, that the T-Core system said we were good to go, but we were still experiencing Category 1 typhoon conditions. And when you mix the rain with the wind, it is very, very dangerous. So like you said, Rob, if you're even at the shadow of a doubt, just stay in, use your judgment. Use your judgment.
You have those,
first.
yeah, exactly. You have those reflexes built in for a reason. So,
Really?
yeah.
Imagine that. Yeah. I mean, I echo the points that Robert and Kat have made. If you have any doubts, there's a pretty good chance that it's still dangerous outside if you're feeling unsafe. And so, especially when the weather as significant, the event is as significant as what it looks like it's going to be as we go throughout the next few days, I am fairly confident that your supervisors will understand if you do not feel safe, that you would not be able to come to work for the day.
Yeah. And also, somebody was just asking about Tokyo as well here. We were mentioning it earlier. Actually, myself and Jonathan both in Tokyo do expect a big rain event here. I think it's going to get kind of breezy, but I don't see typhoon type of weather in Tokyo. Basically, starting Wednesday evening through Thursday and in the Friday morning, I think the Tokyo and Kanto area are going to see some nasty storms out here as far as the persistent showers coming overhead with this. Also, there is the threat of flooding, especially river flooding, as this does come by overhead. A lot of the major rivers, you get the water up in the mountains outside of the Kanto plain, that all piles up and comes down river. The good news, the drainage in Tokyo is superb. So You don't see flooding that much. Now, there is sometimes when it gets a little bit too crazy. Last year with Washi, Kyoto saw some major flooding because it was just too much for the system to handle. But that was following about a thousand millimeters in a few hours. It was something. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous. It was really record breaking rainfall. As far as Tokyo is concerned, honestly, in my opinion, and we were just talking about, if you think it's dangerous outside, I don't see Tokyo really missing a step on this, because I remember back with Washi, people were still going to work. Unfortunately, in Tokyo, fortunately and unfortunately, people don't take these all that seriously that often, and storms are often much weaker by the time they make it up here. It's going to be a deluge of rainfall, but the trains, if anything, they'll slow down, but they'll still keep running. Um, for the Tokyo area. So if you have travel plans on a plane, now planes are a different situation. Flights on Thursday may be delayed or canceled because those are going into the air. I mean, that's different than when you're actually on the ground walking around in these things. So, yeah, as far as Tokyo is concerned, I do think it's going to be a big rainmaker later on this week. Definitely some gusty winds out of this, but it's not going to be one of these storm systems that skirt the coastline and pound these very gusty winds. Even for our friends in Yokosuka, I know that are watching from there. You're probably going to be put under some advisories with this storm system. You're probably going to be seeing some gusty winds right near the beach. You're probably going to be seeing those waves crash over the breakers, but it's not going to be that super intense type of stuff with this one.
Yeah, you covered the airplane stuff already, but if you do plan on flying, I mean, I have friends who are planning to fly out in the next couple of days. Be prepared to get delayed because of the system. It's especially high traffic areas like Narita and Haneda are both very high traffic airports, and so they will be dealing with a lot in the next couple of days when the system moves through the area. So I would be prepared to get delayed at the very least, if not canceled, for Wednesday, Thursday. By Friday, things should be a little bit better.
Just had a good question actually come through, and thank you people for asking these questions. I really appreciated that, because I was actually just thinking just a split second to myself, like, okay, maybe we should start wrapping up here. But as long as you keep these questions going until you guys are done, then yeah, we'll wrap it up. And I know you guys still have busy schedules here on Sunday evening. Somebody actually just asked a question though about hail. Could this bring hail? And highly unlikely. We don't ever really see that with tropical systems. It's a good question to be had, because you think of severe weather, you think of hail. That probably will not happen. This is a very warm air mass. It's a warm core low. You have a very high freezing level. You don't really see those supercell convective type of storms. With that said, there is the threat of tornadoes. Exactly, right? We get these outer rain bands, especially. Kat, can you confirm it? Has Okinawa seen any tornadoes as of late, or at least the small ones with any tropical systems?
Now, when we say tornadoes, usually people think of the whole twister scenario, so let's just squash that. We usually don't see anything like that, but we do often have tornado warnings, advisories, and there are some. Actually, just a few years ago, there was one right off the coast of Ginawan, and I think last year there was one as well. But we're not talking about major things, although I guess the possibility is out there. So it's always something to keep an eye on as well.
Particularly if you're down toward the islands as opposed to the mountains, you're going to see that potential definitely increase a lot more, because there's a lot more room for it to become an issue when it comes to the twisting, and especially since over the islands, the typhoon, it's already at its core strength. It's going to be the most powerful. So when it comes to the ability to spawn off tornadoes, it'll definitely be high. But as Rob just mentioned, the ability for a tropical system to develop hail is relatively low, especially something this powerful, because there's not going to be any room for it to develop. It's going to be, the rain gets blown around, not enough cold air is going to help solidify it, so it's going to blow around everywhere. And so thankfully hail is not an issue. tornadoes are going to definitely be something that you want to watch out for. It's not guaranteed, but definitely you want to watch out for it.
So I got a few other things I want to talk about, guys, here. And I was just going through some of the information I actually had lined up for us. One of the big things that we often do talk about is the high sea warnings. I do want to get that out of the way, is that people who want to venture out near the coast, just so you know, there already is typhoon warnings in effect for the southern Japanese islands, especially these marine warnings, and we're going to be looking about 8 to 9 meter high waves, so stay away from the coastline. These are a couple standard rules. The other thing, though, is that you were talking earlier, Kat, about how Okinawa is not that pretty, but we got it's made to withstand typhoons, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That doesn't include your lawn stuff. Make sure you bring that in.
Yeah, everything from as far as, like I said, what causes damage is stuff that we usually leave out. So if you've got a satellite dish, take it down. Lawn equipment, a pool, a trampoline, all those little things, especially the military community likes to buy things like gazebos and big outdoor things because you guys tend to have yards. That stuff all needs to come down, and now is the time to do it while it's still beautiful outside and while people are not rushing around trying to get ready. So take that stuff down. And also, as far as things flying around, we have the famous car video from Jello-Watt. Make sure that you're parking there it is right there. You want to make sure that you are taking care of your vehicles as well. Although we think they're big, they're just a little pebble to a storm like this. So you want to try and park them close together if possible. Don't try and park them on the back sides of buildings or whatever. Sometimes you can even talk to neighbors and see if they won't mind if you park in their area or whatever to just prevent this from happening. Same thing with motorcycles as well. You want to make sure you're doing that.
Wow. I saw it at the beginning, but I didn't quite see it in this much detail until just now. I mean, it's just like a toy car, just like Hot Wheels, just being picked up and just thrown over.
Well, you know what happened here? If this was on one of the camps there, and you had these two barracks, and you got these large buildings side by side, and the wind was coming parallel to these cars, and you can see one of those big gusts just come right through. This is one thing. Just be aware that if you do live and you know that your buildings are kind of parallel from the east coast to the west coast, and that's the way these winds are going to be coming in from, and you live in a situation like this, it's some incredible stuff. You don't want to be that guy at the end. Jello-Watt, this was from Typhoon Jello-Watt. This was, and you see all these other cars, it wasn't just this one car. This was a problem all over a lot of the bases in these open areas, where these wide open areas that they had, the wind was just able to come through. There was nothing stopping the wind. We didn't see this problem so much out in town because a lot of things are built a lot closer together. It breaks up the wind before hitting these cars. But yeah, on the bases, there, as you mentioned, there's yards. There's a lot more open areas, and this type of situation really could happen.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There was another video I actually wanted to show you, and this is one reason why I brought up the lawn furniture. This is something that can't stress enough, is that debris often causes the most damage in Okinawa. I mean, you get stuff that can fly around and that you can actually pick up with your own two hands. The wind's going to pick it up and send it flying, and that's what often punctures windows and causes some damage. This poor lady is stuck in a garage. One of these people that actually thought they could venture out in the storm. This footage actually shot by James Reynolds in 2012, and he's going to be there again. So I often call him the Jim Cantori of the Western Pacific. If you know he's in your neighborhood, you better watch out.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You're all too often.
We had a viewer comment who also mentioned, a couple of years ago, they had a trampoline out, and they said that idea. So they're definitely preparing for it this time around. But trampolines, lawn furniture, anything outside, bring them in. Find a way to secure them. Robert, I got a question. This was an interesting one that came in. Can we expect power outages And have power outages normally do they normally take place on military bases during the prior storms that rolled through, and how is that handled?
This is for Okinawa, right?
I believe so.
Uh, I'll defer that to you in a second, Kat, for Okinawa. But what I can say is that just because it's a military base doesn't mean the power is fantastic. Actually, in some cases, especially up here in the Kanto Plain, the power on base goes out before the power in town. I don't know why. What do you see down there? Is it often a major issue?
Yes, actually. A lot of things, there are mainly power outages on the bases. Also, a lot of people don't realize it, but there's a lot of housing that is no longer military base, but used to be. Power tends to go out there next. And those would be places like around Kadena, around MCAS Fatema, and around Courtney. A lot of those areas have been returned to the government, to the Japanese government. They tend to lose power quicker as well. And out in town, I mean, we usually don't have too many problems. Like I said, in almost 10 years now, I've lost power maybe twice. So, I mean, even with the big storms, you might get a flicker. But the bases, they do tend to lose power, and they tend to lose power for long periods of time. So that might be something you want to prepare for if you're sitting home, you got kids, especially the little ones. Find some fun activities you can do in the dark. Get those flashlights out, because it's likely to happen.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the military bases in Okinawa as far as their infrastructure, but I did see a few people actually asking that question. Should I leave from my house and go evacuate to the base? To be honest, you're probably safer at your house, and I think the power might stay on a little bit better than over there. Maybe if you are on the base, you might have some extra assistance if something went bad, but you're probably better staying at your place. And if you try to leave your home, you're going to want to get back to it sooner anyways, so you're putting yourself at risk during that travel time. So
Absolutely. Yeah, the one exception that you definitely want to consider leaving your home, and this really doesn't matter what coast you're on, it depends on how the storm ends up, is if you're living right on the coast. And by that, I mean, there are some people who are living like feet away from the beach. If that's you, you might want to consider staying with a friend for the weekend, but for the couple days or whatever that case may be, because if it so happens that something changes, or there is a storm surge that's a little bit bigger than we expected, or there's erosion, because here in Okinawa we have a lot of man-made beach. You don't want to get caught in that when we're in the middle of a storm. So it's always safer to evacuate if you're one of those people. But for the most part, you're probably better off where you are.
We just got another question about Iwakuni in the Yamaguchi Prefecture. That's close, slightly east of Kyushu. But for your area too, you're looking at the possibility of seeing these strong winds coming through the area, because you will feel the winds way before the eye gets anywhere near you because of the size of the storm. And so definitely make sure that you're taking the preparations even in your area, because you will be dealing with the strong winds as the system comes up. Not as quickly as where people in Okinawa will be dealing with this, because it's much further south, but definitely looking out for the strong typhoon strength winds to come over your area by early to midweek, and definitely dealing with a lot of rain as well.
Yeah, I mean, the track from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, I don't have winds for the track from JMA out that far. I mean, by this time the winds will be removed away from the center, but they still are pretty gusty, 148 to 185. I'm not saying that's what's going to be occurring there at your place in Iwakuni. I'm just saying that risk is there. I think that's going to be more coastal, a little bit of removed from the center of circulation. The other thing is that we're talking about, once we get a little bit farther off there towards the north, there is also some areas that see like ridiculously high winds because of mountain funneling. And sometimes with these storms coming ashore around Kyushu, the immediate coast may not see it, but a little bit farther inland, you'll just see some ridiculously high wind upwards at that 200, 250 kilometer per hour threshold that could cause some damage. Those are areas that are climatologically known for that happening, though. I'm not sure if anywhere around Iwakuni that has that problem. I mean, sometimes you get the inland sea, seeing some pretty high waves kicked up there, but there is that mountain funneling issue a little bit farther inland that you have to worry about if you're up there. All right, sorry?
Yeah, we had one other question saying, what's the likelihood that this system, Noguri, will actually get together with another storm? I don't see that happening. And we've talked about this before, that the steering ridge back to the west is really going to be serving as a blocking mechanism. There aren't any real surface features that are going to combine with the storm. I think we're going to more of the sci-fi idea. Ooh, big storm over here and low pressure over here. They're going to get together and blow up and make this super storm. Meteorology does not work that way. It's a process. There's actually steps that take place. And so when we talk about the combination of storms, it's not impossible, but our scenario here and most scenarios, you don't see combination of tropical systems. One may absorb the other, but not in this situation. Nowhere near this situation. There are no other systems to be absorbed in the track of this typhoon. So not anything to worry about here.
If anything, if we, for this hypothetical situation, we did have another organized low out here, that actually might be somewhat good because it would elongate the low pressure and we'd actually see somewhat of a weakening. So yeah, you're right. That's the realm of sci-fi, you know, and especially with tropical systems. Sometimes you'll get lows merging in the north, and we see a high gradient evolve off of that, but not in the tropics. It doesn't happen. So I wouldn't worry about it too much with that type of situation happening here. So I do want to mention. We were talking a minute ago about the threat of storm surge. Yeah, storm surge is a problem, and you were talking about just a second ago, Kat, if you live right near the immediate coastline, and this got me thinking about these storm systems, and if you live right near the immediate coastline, what should you be expecting out of this? Well, basically, throughout the day, on Tuesday morning, you're going to be seeing these waves. Okay, there's your center of circulation at this time. It's right here. Remember, a lot of the military, you guys live out in this area. You're going to be seeing those winds come in from the east. So it's basically the western or the eastern seaboards of Okinawa is going to be really getting hit throughout Tuesday morning. Now this is going to change though as that passes by and moves off towards the north though, because remember this has that cyclonic circulation. So the winds are going to start to change and come around in from the west. That's when we're going to start to see those winds really pick up. Actually, there's a few inlets and bays in here where there's some low-lying areas. I took off my Google Earth. It was really causing my computer to lag. I wish I probably could put it back up here. But there are a few bays and inlets in here that could see definitely some flooding. Now, the good news is that sea level does, or the elevation of Okinawa does rise quite dramatically once you start moving away from the coastline. So it's not like long areas of 1 to 2 feet above sea level. But those people that do live right on the beach, yeah, that could be a problem there for you. All right, so we got any other questions coming through at this time? Let's see.
Taking a look right now, I don't see anything at the moment.
Well, guys, if we don't really have too many questions at this time, we're going to be probably wrapping this up here in a minute. I did see somebody actually mention about the T-cores. They haven't really... I do want to mention, actually, that JMA issued typhoon warnings for Okinawa since Friday afternoon. This is one reason why we don't like the T-core systems all that much here, is because the official agency for Japan has been putting out these advisories for some time now, and they've really been fairly confident on this. So the T-core systems, and it says likely, Kat, you were mentioning it earlier, it says likely within 72 hours at this time, or no, possible, right?
Yeah, and you know, one of the things with the T-core system, it's so important to understand, it's kind of difficult for some people to grasp, is the military is a company. It operates like a company. And even in the T-Core system, if you go look on Kadena Weather and look at the T-Cores, way down at the bottom, it'll say that the person who has the final say is actually the base commander, the 18th Wing commander. So that's where I think I have a little bit of a problem with the T-Core system. It says a lot of things like possibly or may occur, as you said, and like I said, it doesn't always reflect the actual conditions that are happening. That's why we always emphasize things like the JMA or what actual conditions are happening outside, because it can, although it's a great guideline, especially for newcomers, it can be a little confusing and it can kind of sugarcoat what we're experiencing right now. So it's always important to make sure that you're paying attention to what the actual conditions are, which you can find on westernpacificweather.com. You can find it. I post it on my Facebook page and everything, and I will be posting, which is facebook.com/OkiNinjaKitty. I spam the hell out of that place, so if you want to see like up to the minute stuff, it's there too. But yeah, it's a lot of very gray descriptions on there. So yeah.
Well, you made a good point before, Kat. These are guidelines. These are not. This is not the holy grail of determining whether you go or not. They're guidelines, and you have to take personal safety as the priority. Personal safety for family, family safety. Make that the priority first. Sense the danger. If you feel the danger, then it probably is dangerous. Stay away and make sure that you stay safe. Don't let the guidelines determine. And I think that kind of also goes along with the whole track idea. Oh, the track goes this direction, therefore it's going to be like this. There's much greater impacts that cannot be determined simply by numbers. Numbers don't tell the whole story. Sometimes there are qualitative things that exist that you have to take into account, and the best person to know who it is you.
Absolutely.
We tell you as much as we can ahead of time, but when the weather hits the fan, you have to determine what's safe for you and your family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was actually just a question, if you don't mind. Would landslides or flooding be more of a threat in Okinawa in this situation? Landslides and flooding are always an issue in Okinawa anytime we have a lot of rain, including with tropical storms and rainy season, which we just came out of. Landslides happen all over the island. Massive landslides happen in the north, but a lot of the bases experience some minor landslides as well. So you want to keep an eye out for that if you are on a hill or anything. But flooding is something that you should be concerned about if you are living in, let's see, actually I think there are some bases that have areas that flood out, but these little neighborhoods, such as in the south central part of Okinawa, the little if you're near the water, kind of near a waterway, things can just build up a little bit, and some areas can get flooded. Not major flooding like you probably think of, but enough where you wouldn't want to be driving your car through it. So.
Yeah. Actually, just seeing another question here. Justin asked, with the storm, we were talking about this earlier as well, and that's why if you've been watching all along, we do repeat some of this stuff. I do want to mention that. We're trying to answer these questions here for you. With the storm system being about 43 miles off the coast, does that mean it's going to be weaker? Remember, this eye wall is actually quite strong around this storm system. It is actually quite intense at this point, and what we're going to be seeing is it move just off the western coast. That'll put you right in the right front quadrant. So if anything, yes, it will be stronger. We mentioned earlier winds likely upwards about 105, gusting in 130 knots. That's what the military is putting out there. JMA as well, right on line with that. So even though it is just off the coast, and it may technically not make landfall, it is going to be making landfall in the form of some very intense winds and blinding rains. Jonathan, you want to jump in on anything with that, or?
I think you covered it very well. There's not much that I would add to that. I think that you've mentioned what needs to be mentioned.
Yeah. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm going to try to pull up the microwave imagery, and I'm not sure why I haven't pulled this up earlier because that'll definitely show you how intense this eye wall is at this time. But really, even though it does move off the coast and it moves just off there towards the west, you're still going to be in the right front quadrant of it. Maybe it would be a different situation if it was off the eastern coast. A considerable ways off the eastern coast, but actually in this type of situation, this would be this type. Actually, I personally think this type of situation with this storm system following along the track it is, and I'll go ahead and whip that track back up here for you. Following along the track that it is, it will be a worse situation than if it moved directly over the main island of Okinawa there, because in this case we're seeing it, the right front quadrant move directly over. I think the Kadena area, you probably would still see the eye wall, but maybe you would see a little bit more land interaction as far as decreasing the winds and being sheltered behind some of the hills there. All right. Let's see if we got any other questions at this time. Yeah, somebody was asking if there's any storm clouds out there. You may see that in the comment section. That was a really confusing question. I was kind of like, there's a typhoon here, guys.
There are clouds.
Yes, there are storm clouds. There's a very big storm cloud. Very confusing. And there's not a second storm. This is the same person that asked if there was a second storm that this could merge with. There's not a second storm. There's a few areas in the outflow that may look like, but it's outflow from this storm. Yeah. This is the dominating feature here in the Western Pacific. Do not worry about anything else at this point.
And yeah, that's important. Focus on the matter that's at hand, and the matter at hand right now is Noguri, especially for Okinawa, especially for Kyushu, during the next few days. Be prepared. Those of you who have joined us later, at the very beginning of the broadcast, we were discussing about the importance of preparation, and we emphasized that throughout the broadcast, and it doesn't hurt to emphasize it again. If you don't have preparation kits yet, do it now. Kat talked about how it was a very nice day in Okinawa when it came to the weather. But in terms of preparation, you need to make sure that you are getting the supplies ready to go. If you have any outdoor furniture or anything outside, find a way to secure them indoors, because you don't want those things flying around outside. And they will get picked up and they will be thrown around if you leave them outdoors. Make sure that you are always taking personal safety into account whenever you are trying to decide whether you need to go somewhere or not. Yes, there are guidelines. Yes, there's information, plenty of information for you to make determinations, but you need to make sure that you also decide what is best for you and your family. Robert now has brought up this very impressive image. I'll let you take over and talk about the micro imagery here.
I just had it running there while you were talking about this, and hopefully people put two and two together, talking about supplies, and then you see this imagery here. This is a microwave imagery. It peers through those high cirrus clouds that we talk about. I mean, you take a look at the satellite imagery. This really is dominated by these high cirrus clouds, especially the infrared imagery. But if you zoom in on this, you can see where this eye wall is, in these areas in the darker reds and yellows. This is what we're seeing, these intense winds. And that eye wall right in there, that's where these winds gusting over 300 kilometers per hour are going to be right around that center of circulation. But these outer rain bands that extend away from the center, those are also going to be packing winds, and that's what you're going to start to see by Monday night once the storm system starts to approach you there. But I think like, let's say this storm system did waver a little bit farther towards the west, that would remove a good bulk of the population away from that inner core of the eye wall. That would be good news. But the track that is happening right now, this whole eye is something about 50 kilometers in diameter. The track right now is about 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers offshore. So that would put you in Naha in this area right there on the right. That would not be a pleasant afternoon if that was to follow through. So I really like this image. This is from the SIMS website, the University of Wisconsin. Anybody can pull this up, and it just shows you the storm well out to sea.
I am blown away by this image. It's just looking at the temperatures that are surrounding this, how bright it is, and how far and expansive it is. These are all very key features that we keep an eye out whenever we're talking about a tropical system. When you have this type of expansive influence, when you see the colors as bright as they are, it's business. The storm means business.
Yeah, so I think on that note, we might kind of wrap it up here, guys, because I think people are getting the point that the storm system is going to be coming ashore Monday night. Throughout the day on Tuesday, southern Japanese islands, Wednesday and the Thursday, the main islands of Japan, you're going to be impacted, plus South Korea, southern areas of South Korea, and eastern coast of Taiwan. We're getting reports now that showers have finally kicked in for Manila. Earlier I was saying it's a little bit farther towards the south. Looks like we're starting to get some of these afternoon thunderstorms really popping up there. But I think the bulk of Luzon, especially off towards the north, you probably might stay dry until the storm system moves away. Yeah, so thanks guys for joining in with this update. I really appreciate it. There, Kat and John.
Yeah, and for those of you who may have seen this video in terms of like learning about Western Pacific weather for the first time, or if you heard it from a friend, check out the website. I'll do the plug instead of making Robert doing the shameless plug on his own. I make sure you check it out. There have been a lot of updates. There's a team that keeps the site updated, especially when you have a tropical system developing as big as this is. It becomes even more. It's like really on target. There are a lot of resources for you, but there are also constant video updates and information updates and text updates that you can keep yourself prepared and knowledgeable about this. And so also let your friends know about it as well. But definitely check it out if you haven't had a chance. It's westernpacificweather.com. So make sure that you check it out if you haven't had a chance to do so.
Yeah, thanks for that. Also, yeah, Kat, thanks again for joining in here as well. You go ahead and plug your site if you want to for those people who do it.
Yeah, I am known on the interwebs as Oki Ninja Kitty. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. I'm going to be posting as much information as possible as well. My information doesn't come from meteorological standpoint. It comes a little bit more from the just experience and giving you guys updates of what is actually happening on the ground here. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. It's facebook.com/Oki Ninja Kitty, one word, and youtube.com/Oki Ninja Kitty as well.
I like that name.
Yeah, it's a little different. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks for joining in with this. I really appreciate it. I'm going to leave here with a few other images and a few other videos, so this update will keep running. I'll also stick around for a few more minutes answering any questions in the YouTube channel. But yeah, we got all these information on the website and on the Facebook page, as Jonathan mentioned. If you haven't liked the Facebook page and you're just watching this on YouTube, please go to the Facebook page, check it out. Those stream through. Plus, on the website, we make some really huge and long updates, and we try our best. It's a team of not only meteorologists, but casters and people who just really enjoy forecasting the weather, and we all work together. This is, I would like to say it's non-for-profit. We try to make a profit, but it really is a really extreme non-for-profit here. We don't have the biggest base as a lot of the major companies do. So at this point, we really don't make that much money. So somebody mentioned we should get more support. You can by donating on the website. That would be really nice.
There you go. There you go. Yes.
All right. So thanks again for watching, and as always, yeah, stay safe out there. Bye.